So for the first 1 year of Pokemon card investing, I was actually losing more money than I was making. And it came to a point where I realized that I had to change something. So after writing down all the things I learned, I noticed that most of my losses were based on 5 big beginner mistakes. And after fixing these mistakes, I actually started to make more money with Pokemon cards than ever instead of losing it. So in this video, I want to share with you how I made that happen by fixing these 5 simple but crucial mistakes and how you can use them to prevent you from losing a lot of money on bad Pokemon card investments. Back in 2022, I bought a case of Pokemon Go Elite Trainer boxes for $425. Now, everybody thought that this set was going to be incredibly huge, and everyone was starting to invest in it like crazy. Because, you know, it featured the set Pokemon Go, and it was like really special and cool. And it was also a special set, and usually special sets become valuable, so, you know, everyone started to invest in it. Now, I kind of followed that hype and kind of blindly bought a case of ETBs. And I actually spent quite a lot of my savings on that case. Now, a couple months later, the prices of ETBs actually dropped from $42 to around $28 per Elite Trainer box, which means that the case went for around $280, which is almost the half of what I paid for it. Yeah, that was kind of uncomfortable. And I actually almost decided to just sell the case, get rid of it, and to just get at least $300 back. Anyway, you might be wondering, why did the set lose so much of its value? Well, and in the first couple of months, I was wondering the same thing. But when I started to take a closer look, I realized that the set was first up really easy to complete, and second, the set didn't really have a lot of chase cards. The most expensive card was the Mewtwo V Alt Art, but this card was so easy to pull that it didn't really become valuable at all. And today that card is still going for only $30 or $40. Now what I just explained to you is the risk of following hypes. And I also made a bad investment because one other beginner mistake that I made, but we're going to talk about that in a bit. Now make sure this doesn't happen to you. Make sure to do enough research before you actually buy something. Now of course it can happen that you get a bad investment anyway and you get like in the same position as I was. Now the best thing you can do at that point is hold, because in my case it wasn't really a great idea to just sell it, and actually I'm glad I didn't, because around 3 years later this Pokemon Go ETB case is worth around $700. Now if I decided to sell at the point where I was scared of losing even more money, indeed I would have gotten $300 at that point, but because I decided to hold for a little bit longer, today the case is worth $700. Now following hypes is really fear of missing out, and you have to be really careful for this. In 99% of the cases it's the best to do an investment based on common sense and not based on emotion. And I know this can be difficult sometimes, but make sure to be very careful for following hypes and FOMO. Now a couple months later I decided to actually start buying and selling single cards, which was an awesome thing to do because most cards that I bought were just cards that I liked myself, and afterwards I thought that I would be able to sell it for a big profit. And in most cases I actually was, but in some cases it was really difficult to sell my cards, and that's all because of one big beginner mistake, which is ignoring the card quality. A lot of beginners do not pay enough attention to the quality of the card you're buying, because overall people are looking for cards that are in perfect condition and do not have any damage at all. And even when a card has 1 or 2 spots of whitening on the back of the card, seriously, especially if it's a valuable card, a lot of people do not want to buy the card anymore. So whenever possible, try to find cards that are in perfect condition. And these are a couple of things that you need to focus on in order for the card to be perfect. First, make sure to focus on the centering of the card. This means that you have to pay attention to the borders of the card. So try to find cards that are perfectly cut 50-50 left to right on the card, and also 50-50 top to bottom of the card. Next, make sure to focus on clean edges, so no whitening on the card. Already 1 spot of whitening makes a big difference in being able to sell your cards. And one thing a lot of people actually do not focus on are the corners of the card. If you use a flashlight and you take a closer look at the corners of a card, you can sometimes see that the corners are a little bit bent. Oh, I'm sorry for blinding you guys once again. Now I have to admit, this card is really beat up, but if you take a look at the corners of the card, you can see that there is a little bit of damage. Oh, focus on the card. Yeah. And the last thing you need to pay attention to is whether there are print lines on the cards. These are basically lines that are in the front of the card that's basically just been made in the Pokemon card factory. Now again, trust me, it's way easier to sell your cards if they're in great condition. So when possible, try to find cards that are in perfect condition. Now avoiding these beginner mistakes already helped me a lot to spare a lot of money in Pokemon card investing. But the things that actually made me the most amount of money is 2 easy to use investment strategies that barely anyone even knows that exists. Now I covered all of these investment strategies plus much more important info in a completely for free mini Pokemon card course. You can watch it completely for free, so make sure to check it out in the description. Trust me, no hidden fees or any strange stuff. It can actually help you to become a better Pokemon card investor. Now imagine you going to a Pokemon card store and you're planning to buy some new investments. You see two different booster packs, one going for $4 and the other one going for $30. Now for a lot of people, especially the ones who do not have a lot of experience yet with Pokemon card investing, really want to buy the booster packs which are going for $4. But because of this, a lot of people just buy bad products, making the chance of long-term success way lower. Now in a couple seconds I'm actually going to teach you how to separate good sets from bad sets, but first I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're standing in that store and you have no idea what to buy, and the seller is actually a professional Pokemon card investor and you ask him for help. Now he tells you the following things. Before you buy a booster box or a collection box or any Pokemon card item, make sure to do your research, and not just on a specific product, but he wants you to do research on the set, because the better the set, the higher the chance the product will become more valuable. For example, the seller has a booster box of the set Twilight Masquerade. You've never heard of the set before and you're going to do some research together with the seller. The first thing the seller advises you to do is take a look at the chase cards from the set. So these are the most valuable cards from the set. You decide to search for it in Google and you find out that these are the most expensive cards from Twilight Masquerade. And you see a couple of really expensive cards. For example, this Eevee illustration rare. You can also see a Carmen special illustration rare and a Baron special illustration rare. But the most expensive card is going to be this Greninja EX card. Now next up, the seller advises you to take a closer look at these chase cards, because if the chase cards are actually cards of fan favorite Pokemon, the chances of the set becoming more valuable is even higher. So for example, if a set contains expensive cards from Umbreon, Charizard, Rayquaza, Greninja and all of these kind of cards, it has a pretty high shot of becoming valuable, if you compare it to other sets who have become valuable already, of course. Now after that, he tells you that it's also really important to take a closer look at the current value of the product. So you go to tcgplayer.com and you can see that booster boxes of Twilight Masquerade go for around $275. Now just so you know, this box is both not cheap but also not really expensive, because there are a couple of boxes that are more expensive, but there are also a couple more boxes that are way cheaper. Anyway, based on that, the seller tells you that Twilight Masquerade is a pretty decent set. But if you take a quick look at Temporal Forces, for example, you can see that the most expensive chase cards from the set are not even worth $100, because the most expensive card goes for around $95, which is going to be the Raging Bolt. And all of these cards are not really fan favorite Pokemon either. So based on that, Temporal Forces is not that great of a set. And in that way, the seller can actually help you to make a great investment. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are trying to scam you in the Pokemon card market. And even if you have a lot of experience, you can still fall for these scams. Because a couple months ago, I got actually scammed myself for around $130. Yeah, that one hurt. The guy was basically offering me a couple of cards that he was selling around 60% of the market value. And I already actually knew that it was probably too good to be true, but for some reason I decided to buy from him anyway. I have no idea why afterwards, but I did it anyway. And because of that, I had to pay the price. Now, these people try to scam you by offering cards at a too good to be true price. Now, usually these cards are either fake, in bad condition, or the scammer does not even send any cards at all, which was my case. But when something seems suspicious, you have to be really careful. Now, always make sure to ask for pictures of the card on a black background with a timestamp of your name. And a timestamp is basically a note with your name on it and the date and time on it. And usually when someone can give a timestamp, it's pretty legit. But always just make sure to remember that it's the best to pick up your cards in real life. Of course, I know that's way easier to buy cards online, but if you do not want to take the risk, it's the best to just pick the cards up yourself in real life. Now imagine you see someone selling a first edition base set Machamp card, and the card is actually in really good condition. Now, you do not have a lot of experience with vintage cards, but you do know that overall holo vintage cards are really valuable, especially cards from base set. And the guy who's selling it is asking $75 for the card. Now, you decide to buy it because you feel like you got an awesome deal and you're completely happy with your Machamp card. But afterwards, you check the value of the card and you realize that the card is worth only $20. And that's because Machamp is one of the only holo cards from base set which is not really that expensive. Now, this has happened to me way too many times. I saw a shiny or super cool Pokemon card and I really thought that it was going to be valuable, or it was valuable in the first place, decided to buy it, and after that I realized that it wasn't valuable at all. Yep, that happened way too many times. So mistake number 5 is make sure to always do your research before buying something. It usually only takes a couple of minutes, but it can spare you a lot of money. Now, if you can manage to skip these mistakes and also use the best investment strategies in the market, the chances of you becoming profitable in Pokemon card investing is really high. So you just took the first step with learning what these 5 mistakes were, but if you want to take it to the next step, make sure to check the completely for free mini Pokemon course in the description. Again, it doesn't contain any weird hidden fees or something. Make sure to check it in the description. Thank you a lot for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.